Welcome to a new update. Today it's time for a short Bitcoin update. I've had some questions and people were mentioning, hey, you're expecting a correction. What should I do? Or are we going to see a new all-time high prior to the ETF? I don't think so, but perhaps we can still have some more upside. But I think that after a 2x and another 40% move, it is very likely that we're going to have a period of consolidation rather than a period of continuation. So we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about the inflow. Before we continue, make sure to hit that subscribe button. It's helping me to grow this YouTube audience. Also in the comments beneath, and thank you for last week's names, make sure to drop a name that you would like me to do an interview with, macroeconomic, crypto, just what you would like to drop there. We are building something really cool, and I'm more than proud to share that at a later point in this quarter. But I think you will be finding it very valuable because I'm trying to give all the information that I have, all the knowledge that I have on this YouTube channel. We're going to improve that. That's why your subscription is going to be very helpful, because the larger the audience, the more we can do, the more I can give, the more we can build, and the better we can make your financial future by providing good content. Now, first of all, Bitcoin is above 51k, which is absolutely tremendous if you look at it from a perspective that last year during this period we were still swimming around 25k. We actually were close to a pretty heavy crash because I think it had something to do with ETF during that day as well, but I'm not sure. Anyway, this was a harsh one and reversed back up really soon. Currently what we're seeing is that we're consolidating, but it starts to peak out. It starts to peak out and the first signals are there. The question is, how far will it go? How far up will we go? Before we continue with that, tomorrow I'm going to post a longer altcoin video, which is going to describe why I think that altcoins still have a lag to go, because they are usually behind Bitcoin. But I suspect that Bitcoin is currently getting into a stage of being over. And I also do not expect that this cycle is going to be faster than the previous ones. I honestly believe it's going to be longer, but it's also going to be higher than what we are expecting. In which the thesis of Bitcoin towards 500,000 in 2026 or end 2025 is likely. And then something else is that the Chinese breakdown of the economy and the fact that that is happening is something that we are very much underestimating at this point. The dollar is having a certain concern. Hence why the institutions are probably also looking into a position with Bitcoin to hedge their position of having too much dollars. So I think that from that ground up, we're facing the largest bull cycle we probably have seen in crypto, but also afterwards the biggest crisis ever. So in that case, I've got a very good message and a bad one. But the good message is that probably there's a lot more upside to come, and there is a lot more momentum to come from the ETF. So firstly, this is the ETF and the Bitcoin holdings from the ETF, including the flows on the daily. So what we see here is the daily inflow or the daily flow. For instance, with BlackRock, they have been growing their positions to 127,000 Bitcoin. Fidelity and ARK are following through. And then you've got the smaller ones, and Grayscale still has around 445,000 Bitcoin and had 605,000. There's still a chance in the coming period that this is going to be sold off. And there's also a chance that perhaps the inflow is going to decrease over time, maybe because of the fact that there's just a rebalancing happening with the funds themselves, or there is a lack of interest because they are not going to drop their interest rates, or inflation remains sticky, so the dollar is better and you're going to get a better return on government papers. This is something of a big concern in the next months, because ultimately that's also something, a rate drop isn't actually bullish. It might be, but it's actually not. It's usually a sign of the economy becoming weaker, and it's probably going to push Bitcoin, but as a sense that if it stays at this level, probably we're going to have a case of of Bitcoin correcting. But overall, the inflow is super positive, and the way that it's super positive is the fact that it's more than the daily new supply of Bitcoin. The daily new supply is around 900, and the inflow or the daily change in the ETF is 4,800, 2,500, 6,500, 8,500. So overall, this is the institutional cycle, and that is why the ETF buyers and the institutions are going to push the prices up even more until a level we've not seen before. But there's also going to be an impact of this, and probably in the short term we are valuing the inflow in such a positive manner, while the actual inflow is only having an impact of around 15% of the spot volume on Bitcoin, which means that the other 85% is still coming from holders of Bitcoin, which might move the markets more than just the ETF. So yes, the inflow is great long term, but short term we can still perhaps have corrections taking place before the markets are going to continue their momentum. Hence why I think that at this point we are starting to create our own bearish divergence. We are starting to actually weaken the actual move. So in that aspect, if we are going to have a sort of correction taking place of Bitcoin to anywhere in the ballpark of 46 to 49, if it happens, we don't know. It can also be just 50k at this point. But if that happens, it's going to be a signal to get yourself into a very short-term position, because I think what we also constantly see is that pre-halving we are having a peak and then we have a standard correction. All right. So we have been seeing pretty rough corrections taking place with Bitcoin. I don't need the BitMax one. I actually need this one. In 2016, where we have been seeing this big push up, probably hype going through the roof, then an initial correction taking place of 29%, and then another one of approximately 30% again, resulting into a 40% correction. I'm not saying we will see the exact same, but what I know is that although we did have a correction here of like 60%, I do suspect that anything between 25 to 40% is something we need to be aware of, and is something that you can definitely expect to happen. Which means that if Bitcoin goes to 56k, a correction to anywhere to 40k, I don't believe 34, but to 40k is definitely something to take into account, because this is the range that we're currently acting in. All right. And a correction to 40k is probably going to be in terms of a trend like this, where we are currently having a relatively short correction in an uptrend, then the continuation of the flows and the halving is taking place. Then because of the halving, probably and macroeconomics, a rotation takes place of the markets in which there is not much inflow, or the inflow is just still there, but the sentiment is lower and the halving sentiment is also lower, which means that this is probably the trend. Then we have a first swift correction of 20%, a bounce, and this is the period where altcoins are going to do well. And this is also the period where altcoins are doing well. And then another rough correction, after which we continue to go to the upside. But this is the period where altcoins start to do well. This is a market-wide correction, and then we start to continue to go to the upside. Which probably means, in terms of trend, that this peak is somewhere in March. Correction takes place in April. We have a window of a few months of great times, then a few months of down only, and probably from October-ish to November, maybe slightly earlier, we start to have a significant trend to the upside, and then we can start attacking the all-time high. At this point, I generally do not believe that we're going to have an actual, well, let's say, test of the all-time high. I would love to be wrong on this one, but I suspect that we're going to peak with the actual momentum at this point with Bitcoin, and get ourselves into the top around this area, and then have the consolidation taking place before continuation takes place, and this is the actual first real push. And if the actual push took place from here to here, it's 1.5 years. So from here you have another 1.5 years. If it is from here, it is approximately 6 to 8 months. So if this happens, it's another 6 to 8 months. We have a correction and then another push to maybe end 2025, early 2026 that we peak. Now, what is the game plan when it comes to entering the markets, when it comes to Bitcoin? If there is a short-term correction, I would definitely suspect to get yourself into positions. If we are getting anywhere in the ballpark of 45 or 46 to 49, it is an entry point. But if you have been holding through this entire period, I would suspect that if we get here, you should be scaling off. I think that if there is the bearish divergence taking place, which we also saw in this entire period here on the lower time frames, we saw one, and we got ourselves a 20% correction, which quickly got bought up, that's for sure. But if we're getting here and we get the correction taking place, use those 20% plus corrections to actually enable yourself to get into altcoins, but at some point get yourself a little bit more into cash, because the markets are just not going to go up in one go. So it's a short update today, but tomorrow I promise I'll be giving you a longer update on the markets when it comes to the altcoins. Ciao.